I found out my marriage was a setup at 3 a.m., barefoot in the hallway, listening to my husband whisper how I still didn't suspect a thing. That's when the world tilted, not in a dramatic Hollywood way. No tears, no screaming, just cold, sharp. Like someone pulled the rug and left me standing on ice. Some betrayals aren't loud. They don't slap you in the face. They slide a knife between your ribs while smiling across the breakfast table. Quiet, calculated, wearing a wedding band. Before we dive in, where are you listening from right now? What's your story? Drop it in the comments. I'm Jenna Whitmore, 38, CFO at a private firm in Chicago. Numbers are my thing. Spreadsheets, forecasts, risk management. Funny how I never thought to manage my own. I've been married to Ethan Whitmore for 12 years. People used to say we were the perfect couple. He was charming in that effortless way. The kind of man who knows exactly when to say the right thing, to make you feel seen, special, protected. He liked being the one in control, the provider. He handled all the bills, the investments, the financial details. I let him, not because I couldn't, but because I wanted to believe in us, in trust, in that old-fashioned idea of partnership. Turns out, I was sleeping next to a man who saw trust as a blindfold. Looking back, the signs were there. His phone, always flipped face down. Late nights at the office, vague meetings that never had clear explanations. I noticed. Of course I did. But I told myself, don't be paranoid. Don't ruin a good thing over nothing. That night, though, there was no pretending left. I woke up because the bed was cold, reached out, and Ethan wasn't there. I figured, bathroom maybe, kitchen, no big deal. Then I heard his voice, low, careful. Coming from his office down the hall. I didn't mean to snoop, but when your gut screams, you listen. She still doesn't suspect a thing, he said, calm, steady, like he was reading a script. My heart started pounding. Hard. My feet hit the cold wooden floor like I was walking into an execution. I pressed myself against the hallway wall. The door was cracked just enough. His office lamp spilled a sliver of light across the floor. And there he was, my husband, speaking in a tone I'd never heard before. Yeah, I've already transferred it. It's going as planned. Almost done. My blood ran cold. Transferred what almost done with what I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. But some instinct kicked in. I crept back to bed, heart hammering so loud I was sure he'd hear it. When he came back, slipping under the covers, his breathing was slow, steady, as if he hadn't just gutted our marriage down the hall. I lay there, eyes closed, every cell in my body on fire. The man I loved was plotting something big, something against me. The next morning, while he slept, I did something I should have done a long time ago. I opened our banking app. My hands were shaking. I wasn't sure what I was expecting to find, but the truth has a way of showing up when you finally dare to look. Small withdrawals, $500, $1,000, $2,000. Steady. Over the past few months, not enough to raise red flags, but enough to bleed us dry without me noticing. A slow, methodical siphoning. Ethan appeared in the kitchen like nothing was wrong, mug in hand, that easy smile on his face. Checking the accounts early today, he asked, casual, friendly, like we were just two people having coffee, not a wife and a husband on opposite sides of a war she hadn't realized started. I noticed some withdrawals, I said, keeping my voice even. Wanted to make sure everything's fine. Oh, those small investments. Just forgot to mention, sip, smile, deflect. He didn't even blink. But now I was watching. Really watching. That evening, his phone never left his side. Texts, calls, all taken outside. He didn't even try to hide it well anymore. I just hadn't been looking. Then, fate handed me a lifeline. He left his phone on the table, unlocked, said he was going to shower. My fingers hovered. One glance. That's all I needed. A new message lit up the screen. Send her Iliamaro. Just make sure she stays in the dark. Iliamaro. I'd never heard that name before, but my gut knew. This wasn't some business deal, this was personal. I set the phone down carefully, like it was laced with poison. My mind raced. Ethan wasn't just keeping secrets. He was building something. A plan. A trap. And he thought I was still in the dark. He was wrong. That was the moment I stopped being his blindfolded partner. That was the moment I decided I wouldn't let him write the ending to my story. After that night, something shifted in me. Ethan still played his role, the attentive husband, the casual charm, the quiet reassurances, but the script was wearing thin. Now that I was really watching, every move of his felt rehearsed. The way he'd pour my coffee in the morning, like clockwork. The way his phone never left his hand, always screen down. His kisses were still there, but they had no weight, like someone going through motions they didn't believe in anymore. But I kept quiet, outwardly. Nothing changed. Inside, everything had. I started small. Every spare minute. I dug into our finances, late nights, early mornings, lunch breaks at my desk. I opened every account I could access, tracked every transaction, every investment he'd brushed off. What I found was sobering. Ethan wasn't draining the accounts all at once. He was smarter than that. It was death by 1,000 cuts. Small withdrawals, transfers to accounts I didn't recognize, money disappearing in neat little sums. A slow bleed designed not to trigger alarms. And here's the kicker. These weren't joint investments. They were personal siphons, hidden pockets he'd been feeding for months, maybe longer. I couldn't believe how blind I'd been, but denial is easy when it wears a familiar face. Ethan, meanwhile, kept up appearances, dinners together, small talk, the occasional date night. But more and more, he'd casually mention financial security. It might be smart to consolidate our assets. Jenna, he'd say, stirring his coffee. Simplify things. Just in case life throws us a curveball. I played along, smiled, nodded, even acted interested. But every word out of his mouth sounded like someone laying bricks for my future prison. I knew I couldn't fight this alone. So I called Anna Linford, my college roommate, my best friend, and thankfully, a damn good lawyer. When I told her everything, the late-night whispers, the hidden transactions, the message about Iliamaro, she listened in complete silence. No gasps, no interruptions, just that calm, steady presence she's always had. When I finished, Anna's voice was low, but firm. Jenna, you need to move your assets, immediately. It wasn't a suggestion, it was a survival order. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me over the phone. I've never touched our accounts. Anna, I let him manage everything. Well, she said, with a sharpness that cut through my shame, that ends today. Within 24 hours, we had a plan. Anna helped me set up a trust in my name only. Every asset of value, the apartment, my savings, investments linked to my salary, we started transferring them under legal protection. Quietly, cleanly, no sudden movements that could tip Ethan off. I learned more about financial self-defense in 3 days than I had in 12 years of marriage. And through it all, Ethan kept smiling, kept playing the doting husband. He had no idea the ground was shifting beneath his feet. One evening, a week into this quiet war, he struck what he thought was his checkmate. We were sitting in the living room. He had his laptop open, going over expenses. Jenna, he said. So casual, it almost sounded sweet. I've been thinking maybe we should get everything under one umbrella, consolidate our finances, make things easier to manage. If anything ever happens, you won't have to worry. I'll take care of the paperwork. All you'd have to do is sign. There it was. The trap. Polished, rehearsed, gift-wrapped in concern. I looked at him. Really looked. The man I once trusted implicitly, now laying out a carefully disguised heist in plain sight. But I didn't flinch. "Sounds reasonable," I said, matching his tone. "Can you show me the documents first for the first time?" His mask cracked, just for a second, a flicker of surprise. But he recovered quickly, flashing that smooth smile. "Of course. I'll get them ready soon." Soon. He had no idea I was already 10 steps ahead. The tension was mounting. Ethan thought he was orchestrating a quiet ambush, but the battlefield was already shifting. Anna and I worked day and night. Every document, every loophole, every legal shield we could build, we did it. By the time Ethan was ready to strike, his target was gone. His carefully crafted web was about to catch nothing but air. But I didn't let him see any of that. To Ethan, I was still the unsuspecting wife, still smiling over coffee, still agreeing with his plans. He thought I was playing checkers. I was playing chess, and every move brought me closer to the truth. He was preparing to hit me with divorce papers. I could see it in the way he watched me, calculated, waiting for the perfect moment to deliver the blow. But the thing about blindsiding someone is, it only works if they're really blind. And I wasn't anymore. He didn't know it yet, but his checkmate was already falling apart. Ethan made his move on a quiet Thursday afternoon. He came home early. No warning, no excuses. Just walked in, briefcase in hand, wearing that smug confidence he always used when he thought he had the upper hand. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, carefully placing a stack of papers between us like a man laying down cards. "We need to talk. Jenna." His tone was measured, practiced. He'd been rehearsing this moment. I already knew what was coming. "I want a divorce," he said. Calm, professional, like he was discussing a business merger. "I think it's for the best. We've grown apart. I don't want things to get tense. The irony was suffocating. I didn't flinch, didn't ask why. I let the silence hang, heavy and deliberate, until it was his turn to squirm. When I finally spoke, my voice was steady. "Before we get into that, there's something you should know." His fingers tapped the table. Annoyed, impatient. "What is it? I've already moved all my assets into a protected trust. Every syllable landed like a punch. The apartment, my savings, my investments, everything's secure. You can't touch a cent." For a moment, he didn't move, didn't blink, but I saw it, the tightening of his jaw, the subtle clench of his fists, the way his throat worked to swallow the shock, what his voice cracked, sharp and cold. "You heard me, Ethan. You're too late." The control he prized so much slipped through his fingers, and he knew it. But men like Ethan don't retreat. They retaliate. 3 days later, an envelope arrived from his lawyer, thick, heavy, the weight of a man grasping at straws. Inside was a formal divorce petition. Ethan was demanding half of everything. My apartment, 50% of our joint accounts, monthly spousal support, claims that he'd sacrificed his career for our marriage, that my success was built on his unpaid labor. I laughed, a bitter, sharp sound that cut through the quiet of my apartment. Ethan had never sacrificed anything. I'd built my career brick by brick while he siphoned money in the dark. Now he wanted to rewrite history on legal paper. I called Anna immediately. "He's not backing down," I said, flipping through the stack of lies. "Of course not," she replied, voice steady but laced with steel. "He's a cornered rat. He'll throw everything he has at you, even if it's garbage. Then we fight. I said. Simple. Final. Ethan didn't stop at demands. A week later, rumors started swirling at my office, whispers behind my back. Looks that lingered too long. Then Rachel, my assistant, walked in, pale, tense. There's something you need to see. She handed me a printed sheet, an anonymous forum post accusing me of embezzling company funds to hide assets during a divorce. Dozens of comments. One chillingly specific, I know who it is. Jenna Whitmore. Ethan was playing dirty. Character assassination. Destroy my career, my reputation. Hit me where it hurt most, but I wasn't the same woman he thought he married. I wouldn't break. Anna's response was swift. First, we send a cease and desist. Next, we sue for defamation. He wants a war fine. We'll give him one. But Ethan had one last card up his sleeve, a formal lawsuit accusing me of financial fraud. He claimed I'd embezzled money from our joint accounts, submitted documents, transaction records, even brought in a co-plaintiff, Ilya Marrow. The name hit me like ice. Ilya was the shadow from that first message. Send her Ilya Marrow, just make sure she stays in the dark. Now he had a face, a history of fabricating financial records, a professional scam artist. The evidence they submitted looked damning. On paper, it painted me as the villain, but they made one fatal mistake: arrogance. Anna brought in a forensic financial expert. Every document, every timestamp, every transaction was dissected, and within days, the cracks appeared. The accounts Ethan claimed I used to transfer funds, they didn't even exist at the time of those transactions. The dates didn't match. The paper trail was sloppier than they realized. A week later, we were back in court. The air was thick, tense. Every breath felt heavier. Ethan sat across from me, his suit sharp, his posture rigid, but his hands betrayed him. White-knuckled grip on the table, jaw clenched so tight it looked painful. The judge's voice cut through the silence. Based on the evidence, the transactions Mr. Whitmore claims were made by Ms. Whitmore are impossible. Forensic analysis confirms these documents were fabricated. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. I glanced at Ethan, caught the twitch in his eye, the slight slump of his shoulders. He knew it was over. The judge continued. Due to the deliberate submission of falsified evidence, the court dismisses all of Mr. Whitmore's claims. Furthermore, an investigation into these fraudulent documents is hereby ordered. Anna's hand briefly squeezed mine under the table. No words, just quiet triumph. Ethan's lawyer tried to object, his voice shaky, but the judge silenced him with a single raised hand. The gavel fell. Sharp. Final. Court is adjourned. Ethan didn't stand right away. He sat frozen. The man who thought he'd orchestrated my downfall now trapped in the rubble of his own lies. As I stood, I let myself savor it. Not the victory itself, but the weight lifting off my chest. The quiet satisfaction of knowing I'd faced the worst of him and I was still standing outside the courthouse. The air felt cleaner. The tension that had followed me for months finally breaking. I didn't win because I was ruthless. I won because I was prepared. Ethan thought betrayal was a game of surprise. He never expected me to play smarter. In the weeks after the courtroom dust settled, Ethan's perfect world began to crack. And this time, it wasn't me on the receiving end. It started with whispers. His colleagues found out about the forged documents, about the lawsuit, the failed scheme to gut his wife financially and lie his way to a payday. Finance circles are small. Reputation moves faster than fact. By the end of that month, Ethan's company dropped him, quietly but thoroughly. His good name was now a cautionary tale. Investors distanced themselves. Old friends stopped returning his calls. His beloved sports car sold. The luxury apartment he'd flaunted on the market. Everything he tried to take from me, he ended up selling to pay his legal bills. It didn't take long for Ilya Mero to vanish. Typical. Cowards never stay for cleanup. Ethan was left standing in the mess he made, alone, exposed. I never reached out, never gloated, because the truth is, his downfall didn't need my help. It was self-inflicted. For me, life didn't snap back to normal. There's no switch that flips off betrayal, but there is a quiet strength that comes when you reclaim control. The first night after the verdict, I sat on my balcony, glass of wine in hand, Chicago's skyline stretching out like a promise, not of new beginnings, but of ownership, of my life, my choices, my future. Anna messaged me that night. Congratulations. Jenna, he's officially lost everything. I smiled, not out of spite, but because it was the first time in months that my name wasn't tangled in Ethan's lies. The weight on my chest. It wasn't gone, but it was lighter, manageable. I'd carried the burden of his betrayal quietly, silently preparing. While he thought I was blind, I was building armor. That's the part people don't tell you about surviving betrayal. It's not about rage. It's not even about revenge. It's about learning to trust yourself again. Because every lie, every manipulation chips away at your own voice. It makes you question your instincts, your worth, your judgment. Ethan's betrayal forced me to confront how much I'd given away in the name of trust. I thought love meant handing over the keys to my life, but love without boundaries isn't love. It's surrender. I used to believe protecting myself was cold, distant, but I've learned it's necessary. Trust isn't blind. It's built with eyes wide open. A week later, Ethan's lawyer reached out. They wanted to settle quietly to avoid the criminal investigation escalating further. I declined. This wasn't vindictiveness. It was accountability. Actions have consequences. And for once, Ethan wasn't going to sidestep them. Over the next month, his life continued unraveling. The financial community blacklisted him. The people who once praised his business acumen now avoided his calls. The man who'd built a life on appearances couldn't keep up the facade. But this isn't a story about Ethan losing. It's about me winning myself back. One evening, after a long day at work, I met Anna and a few close friends for dinner, a quiet celebration. No toasts, no grand speeches, just good food. Laughter that felt real again. People who had stood by me when the floor fell out. At some point, Anna raised her glass to Jenna, who taught us that being smart is the best kind of beautiful. I laughed, a real, from the gut kind of laugh. Because for the first time, I wasn't laughing through pain. I was laughing from freedom. Later that night, as I walked home, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. One final attempt. This isn't over. Ethan, still clinging to the illusion of control. I didn't hesitate. Blocked the number. Simple. Final. That tiny act-tapping block felt more powerful than any courtroom victory. He had no power left. No more space in my life. No more access. I stood on my balcony again that night. The city lights below didn't feel distant anymore. They felt reachable, like I'd finally stepped out from under his shadow. Betrayal leaves scars, but scars mean you've healed. The lesson I learned. Trust needs protection. Not walls, not paranoia, but vigilance, clarity. Sometimes, loving yourself means preparing for betrayal from the people you never expected, not out of cynicism, but out of respect for your own worth. Ethan thought he could dismantle me quietly, but I dismantled the illusion he built. In the end, I didn't just protect my assets, I protected myself. That's the victory. It's not loud. It doesn't come with applause. It's sitting in your own space, breathing without fear, knowing you'll never let anyone have that kind of power over you again. This was never about destroying him. It was about reclaiming me.